Where's the no Claymore right now?
Okay, Dexter, about one more time.
We have the perimeter, and we can have everybody else slow down.
Crime up, shootings way up, killings way up. You know, we had our low in 2019 in homicides. Now we're about to break records. What's fueling that?
Probably like ongoing beef with like territories and stuff and with people.
Violent crime has been a huge concern in New Orleans all year.
They uncles or brothers or people might have grew up older too and already in a conflict with people. So as you being young and part of that generation, it's like a generational cycle.
Locals and business owners say the crime here is out of control.
Different cities have used different models to successfully reduce crime, and Boston is one of the most well-known.
They had a comprehensive network map of all the different gangs of Boston at that time. And they developed a strategy which brought in every unit of government. And they'd bring in housing, medical, they'd bring in psychiatry services, they'd bring in social services, they'd bring in corrections. They developed the circle model of a meeting with the people they suspected of being involved in violent crime. And those often used police data and police intelligence to target those individuals.
So a central component of the Boston model is known as a call-in.
And when they met, they'd look at the young person, they'd say, you've got three choices. One, you go to jail. The second choice you have is dead. You get shot in this gun violence. And the third option you have is change. And we're going to give you all the resources, mental health, jobs, anger management, everything we know that has a track record, and you're going to change. And they reduced both incarceration of these young people and deaths and arrests and murders, which was the most important outcome.
And a key to the strategy was targeting the most high-risk offenders.
There are many models, Boston model, Chicago model. There's CompStat out of New York City that got transplanted to New Orleans. If there was a single plan that was universally successful, it would be used by all cities and all police departments. Shortly after the Pennington Plan, we had a meltdown with Hurricane Katrina and then a consent decree that is still in place.
After identifying numerous problems within the NOPD in March, the U.S. Justice Department is set to enter into a consent decree with the city.
We are going to recreate the New Orleans Police Department, and it is our mission to, in fact, create the best department in the country.
Clearly, we need a police department that is big enough with enough officers on patrol that you don't have to wait an hour and a half to get a police response when you call 911. But what is being done to lessen the number and the volume of those 911 calls? Once again, it goes back to, the preventative measures that keep those calls from happening, to give kids, alternatives and some other, things and programs.
What about children's art in the background? My name is Patrick Young. I am the Director of Gun Violence Prevention for the Mayor's Office here in New Orleans. Growing up in New Orleans, been living in New Orleans all my life. The violence in the 90s, my brother was murdered. And that really just changed how I felt about, life in general. New Orleans has this motto, get it how you live. And so instinctively, just being from New Orleans was like, I just want to get a gun to kill the person that killed my brother. That retaliation mindset, being in the feelings of what it feels to know that something that's happened to someone close to you, and you feel like you have to do something about it. I myself would wind up in prison, arrested for armed robbery. So many people I know were impacted by some of those laws that were created in the 90s. There's no treatment, there's no support, you're just doing 85%. I was off for 65 years with no priors, no victims, And it was just how at 19 I'm gonna face 65 years. So there was no path where you can rectify. We just had a young lady last week. She went to college in Texas, so we was excited about that. So this office is the city efforts to address shootings and killings in the city of New Orleans and to identify what strategies and interventions we can use for prevention to stop those shootings from increasing. So it started with a community organization. There was another surge in violence. And people were fed up trying to figure out what to do. There was an organization called Solutions, Not Shootings. And in their advocacy and outreach, they modeled after the Chicago model, which was a ceasefire model.
We are going to continue to have the same thing that we've seen every day since 1979 if we don't dramatically change our behavior patterns in the city of New Orleans.
Then the city administration under Landrieu decided, let's invest in that program and let's see if it worked. And ceasefire started.
Considered one of the city's most violent neighborhoods, Central City is the testing ground for Ceasefire New Orleans, a Chicago-inspired initiative launched here this spring.
After that, ceasefire changed its name to Cure Violence. When Mayor LaToya got elected, she had a meeting with some advisors and they were trying to figure out, well, what's the thing that we can do in the long term to try to prevent crime and violence from happening? And one of the things that was identified is that we needed a specific office to address just the shootings and killings in the city. The office has actually 4 different programs. One is our community crisis response team, which essentially is an evolved output of what the Cure Violence model was. We've evolved that into just community crisis response, where we respond to hospital scenes and shooting scenes. Secondly, we have our Jumpstart program, which works with youth 16 to 24 who are not in school, disconnected from job opportunities, may have had some run-ins with the law. We also have our CEO program where we work with people who are formerly incarcerated. And then lastly, we launched the first ever Barbers and Beauticians Collective Fellowship, which provides peace ambassadors in the community.
We see program after program pop up, it's the flavor of the week, and then it gets derailed.
Jumpstart is now ending its relationship with the city, and other programs may come to a sudden halt too, as questions swirl about a nonprofit that funds them.
Now, we're looking at questions about a nonprofit that the mayor started, which under its umbrella has many positive programs on paper, but caught in bureaucratic entanglement and yet again, promising programs derailed.
We just find that right now, the psychology of violence is your inability, it's a reaction to your inability to control your emotions. That's what we do know. And what we do know is that when you ask people what's happening after the fact, they say something made them feel a way. And if you're not able to control your feelings or emotions, and you haven't been taught that, and you haven't been trained in that, we can expect a violent reaction, similar to when kids have temper tantrums. We saw in the news recently a young lady who was bullied in school. She felt that in order for her to stop this bullying, I have to get a gun and go and address the problem. The thinking that that was okay is the problem. We have to change that type of thinking in all situations.
There are some people who will say that we can study the why and we can talk about the root causes, but we basically have a patient on the table that is bleeding out and we need to do triage. Like right now we don't. They say we don't have time to study. We need to figure out what's happening right now. Is that just?
That's fear, and it's if this was a quick fix, we would have fixed it a long time ago. If it was just about policing, we would have fixed it a long time ago. Louisiana led the nation in incarceration. If it's just about locking up folks, we would have solved this a long time ago. The underlying causes remain unanswered. And so until we get to those underlying causes, we're just going to keep having more pockets of rise and falls.